Hello everyone, welcome to Shaping the Way We Teach English Webinar Course 13, brought to you by the American English team. My name is Heather Benucci, also known as Moderator Heather, and I'm excited to introduce today's webinar. I want to say a big welcome back to all of our teachers who have joined us in past webinars, and also a big hello to teachers that are joining us for the first time. We're so happy to have you here. Here you can see the schedule for Course 13. We still have several sessions remaining and lots of great topics to look forward to. Okay, the question of the day. How can you participate in the webinars? How can you interact with the presenter? Can any of our experienced webinar participants answer this question? Looking for some answers coming up in the chat. All right, Fabiolian just got it right in the chat box. During the webinar, you're going to see me and moderator Jenny operating in the chat box, and we also rely on the whole webinar community to help each other out. During the webinars, you're going to hear but not see the presenter. And as we've seen from our experienced participants, the way for you to participate primarily is by using the chat box. This is where you can ask questions or make comments related to today's topic. Of course, not every question will be answered during the session, as there are often hundreds of teachers participating. However, there's another place to ask questions, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Your presenter may also ask you questions in the form of polls, and these multiple choice questions will appear on the screen for you to click in and answer. And some people may experience technical problems. Unfortunately, we can't fix individual technical issues, but we will let you know if we have a global problem. If you lose sound, try refreshing your screen, and a great way to follow along is with the caption pod you can see at the bottom of the screen. Webinar courses consist of 6 webinars. During the course, webinars take place every other Wednesday. Participants who attend at least 4 of 6 webinars will receive an e-certificate from their regional English language office or local U.S. Embassy. To ensure you are eligible for your e-certificate, we will ask you to submit attendance information at the very end of the webinar. Trust us, we will let you know when to do it. Please do not submit it before we request it, or your attendance will not be counted. For individuals, meaning that you're participating alone at your own computer, we'll just need to collect your email address. And for viewing hosts, meaning that you are with a group of teachers watching the webinar together, we will only need the host's email address and the number of participants as seen on the screen. Again, we will collect this information at the end of the session. Many of you are already familiar with our Ning site, but if you haven't registered yet, please do. It's a great way to continue the discussions about each webinar topic, to interact with your colleagues from around the world, and to get access to additional teaching resources. Question for you: how many of you have already participated in the discussion related to today's topic, reading strategies? Raise your hand if you have. You can raise your hand by clicking on the icon that looks like a little man on the top part of your screen. Awesome, I see lots of hands going up. Also on the Ning, we post pre-webinar resources and questions, and afterwards we will post the recordings and PowerPoints and any other resources the presenter provides. And finally, we encourage you all to visit our website, americanenglish.state.gov, where we have a wide range of resources available for teachers and learners of English. All right. Today's session is going to focus on reading activities and strategies. Together, we will consider how to engage students and help them develop skills needed to make them better readers. Our presenter will demonstrate how to help struggling readers delight in reading while improving their comprehension, speed, and vocabulary through interactive classroom activities. We'll explore practical and easy strategies that you can incorporate into your classes, including pre-reading activities and activities to stimulate critical and creative thinking. It is my pleasure to welcome today's presenter, Serena Chu-Mraz. A native of San Francisco, California, Serena is an ESOL professor at Skyline College in San Bruno, California. She served as an English language fellow at the Universidad Autónoma de San Luis Potosí in Mexico in 2010 to 2011, where she trained teachers in the teacher certification program. Her experience includes coordinating and teaching English for the Puente Project at Laney College, an academic success program for underserved community college students, and teaching Vietnamese refugees in Hong Kong. She presented at the 2012 and 2013 TESOL International Conventions and has given teacher training webinars through the Shaping the Way We Teach English program and through the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. Serena speaks Spanish and Cantonese. Without further ado,
thank you so much and welcome to all the participants from all over the world. This webinar is Easy Reading Activities to Engage Students. And it's so exciting to see everyone from so many different countries. I see there's Bilal from Jordan, Felicia from Suriname, Brian Gabriel from the Philippines, Alicia from Ecuador. It seems like we have a big group from Senegal. We have Usmane, Mabarane, Awa, Demba. Hello, everybody. We have Alejandra, who is overlooking the Andes in Mendoza, Argentina, and Kamala in Azerbaijan. So welcome to everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. So you don't know very much about me, and I'm going to be with you for the next 90 minutes. So I thought I would do a little icebreaker for you today. And this icebreaker is called Two Truths and a Lie. This is for you to get to know a little bit about me. I'm going to put 3 sentences on the screen. 2 of the sentences are true and 1 is a lie. So you're going to have to guess which one is a lie. So here we go. Sentence number 1, I am going to Spain in 5 days. Number 2, I lived in Mexico for 2 years. And number 3, I hate spicy food. All right, so put in your chat box, which one do you think is a lie? All right, would you like to know the answers? Okay, number 1, I am going to Spain in 5 days. Number 1 is true. I am on my summer vacation right now. Final exams just ended, so I'm going to Spain and Portugal with my husband and my sister. So I'm really looking forward to that. Number 2, I lived in Mexico for 2 years. Number 2 is true for those of you who were paying attention to the introduction. So I lived both in San Luis Potosí and in Querétaro. Most particularly, I lived in San Juan del Rio. I know that there's the Universidad Autónoma here from San Juan del Rio. So welcome to this webinar. I'm glad that you're here participating. And number 3, I hate spicy food. So obviously, number 3, that is the false one. I actually love spicy food. And some of my favorite types of foods are Mexican, Thai, Vietnamese, and Chinese. All right, so now you know a little bit about me. And I also want you to look at this picture of me in the corner. And I want you all to guess, where am I in this photo? Now, don't just tell me the country. Tell me the city. Let's see who can get it. We have a lot of good guesses. I'll give you a hint. It's not in the United States and it's not in Canada. All right, I think those of you in Mexico are getting it. This is in Mexico and the city is Guanajuato. So those of you who got Guanajuato, you are correct. You get bonus points. Yay! All right, I know there's a lot of you from Mexico, so it's great to see you here at the webinar. All right, so let's get started with this question. What are some problems students have with reading? So in the pre-webinar poll, a lot of you responded to this question. What's the biggest challenge or struggle that your students have? And it looks like most of you marked down they cannot comprehend what they read. But other responses were that your students don't have enough vocabulary, and many of your students find reading very boring. So here are some responses that teachers give me when they talk about their students and the struggles they have with reading. They say that their students don't like reading. They read too slowly, and reading is very frustrating for the students because when you read too slowly, as you know, you won't comprehend. They have a limited vocabulary, and this also is frustrating because they don't understand what they're reading. They have a lack of comprehension. They lack critical thinking. So many of our students will read the reading very quickly. They might be able to answer a few true, false, or multiple choice questions. But if you ask them a deeper question that requires thought on the reading, they have no idea how to answer it. Another problem. Many of you noted that your students don't read enough, and it's probably connected to the fact that they don't enjoy reading. Many of our students also don't connect to the reading. We give them a reading and they don't see how it's related at all to their own lives. So what happens to our students who are poor readers? What happens is they get caught up in the vicious cycle of the poor reader. So students who are slow or poor readers, they experience frustration, right? And when they're frustrated, they're going to read less. But reading less causes them to have less vocabulary. They won't develop their vocabulary. And if they don't have vocabulary, they'll have low comprehension. And then they just continue to go around in this circle. And it's a vicious cycle because they somehow are unable to get out of this vicious cycle of the poor reader. So the question is, how do we get students out of the vicious cycle of the poor reader? And how do we get them to get into the virtuous cycle of the good reader? Now, as we can see from this cycle, good readers are those who enjoy reading. If they enjoy reading, they'll read more, develop more vocabulary, and the more vocabulary they develop, they'll have higher comprehension, and they'll continue to read more. And they'll continue to get better at reading. And again, they'll go around and around this circle. So how can we get our students to go from the vicious cycle of the poor reader to the virtuous cycle of the good reader? In this webinar, we're going to discuss 4 different strategies to help address the needs of struggling readers. The first strategy we'll discuss is to connect reading to prior knowledge. So as we discussed before, a lot of students aren't interested in what they're reading and they're not connected to what they're reading. So in this webinar, I'm going to present to you different activities that you can do with your students to activate their prior knowledge. Number 2, we're going to discuss using graphic organizers. As you know, visuals are very helpful to helping students learn and organize information. So I'm going to give you some examples of different graphic organizers that you can use with your students to help them organize their information that they read. Number 3, our third strategy is to do close readings. So a lot of students will just skim over the reading very quickly. Of course, they're only going to read it once, and they'll tell you that they're all finished with their reading, but they haven't really thought about their reading or looked at it closely. I'm going to show you some strategies in which you can help students read their readings more closely and put more thought into what they read. And our fourth strategy is to encourage critical thinking. how can we get our students to actually think deeply about what they read? Not just to fill in the blank or answer true-false questions, but to actually discuss and think about about what questions they have and what thoughts they have about the reading. So let's go ahead and look at our first strategy, which is to connect reading to prior knowledge. And some of the pre-reading activities that we're going to discuss today will be the KWL chart, the Give One, Get One activity, mind mapping, and a pre-reading quiz. And first of all, let's look at the poll that you did at the beginning of this webinar. And I asked you, why is it important to activate students' prior knowledge? And you answered, it allows them to connect to the reading that they already know, so making connections. It will help them understand the reading better. It gets students interested in the reading. So the correct answer was all of the above. Doing pre-reading activities gets students interested in the reading before they even start reading the text. So let's go ahead and take a look at the KWL chart. And how many of you have used a KWL chart before? Raise your hand. All right, so it looks like several of you have used the KWL chart before. I like this activity because it's super simple. And all you have to do is tell the students to make a 3-column chart with KWL on top. The K stands for what I know, the W stands for what I want to know, and the L stands for what I've learned. So before you even have your students do the reading, have them do the KWL chart and have them fill out the first column. What do they already know about the topic? So for example, I'm going to give you a reading about the city of San Francisco, since I'm from San Francisco. So I would ask you, what do you know about the city of San Francisco already before you do the reading? So you can write down your answers in the chat box. So some examples would be, oh, the Golden Gate Bridge. I know that there's a Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. Or some of your students who are sports fans out there might say, oh, I've heard about the San Francisco Giants. It's the baseball team over there. So I see that some of you are typing in some responses. You know some things already about San Francisco. Annalise, you know that it's located in California. It's full of attractions. There's a Chinatown, and the island of Alcatraz is just off of San Francisco. So as you can see, having the students fill out the K chart gets them talking about the subject, gets them interested in the subject before they do the reading. You can have the students do this individually first, and then have them share this in a group or with partners to help them get the discussion going. After the students fill out the K, you can have them fill out the W part. And that's, what do they want to know? So you can go ahead right now in the chat box, go ahead and type in some questions that you might have about San Francisco. So you might want to say, okay, Nozizwe from South Africa says, how long is the Golden Gate Bridge? You might ask, like Pilar in Peru, what's the population? All right, what does the city look like? So there's lots of questions. And it's good to have students write down their questions before the reading, because when they actually go to do the reading, they'll be looking for the answers to their questions. Now, for the L part of the chart, the students will fill out the third part, the L, after they're finished reading, and they'll write down what they've learned. And this is a way for you to check their comprehension. And again, it's a good idea to have your students share the KWL chart in pairs or in groups, because it makes for really great discussion. I have attached the KWL chart to the Ning website, so you can go ahead and print it out. But even better, instead of going around and making a lot of photocopies of this, you can just have your students make 3 columns on a piece of paper, and that would be even easier. I've also had students do this on the board or on a piece of poster paper. So this is a great activity to activate prior knowledge. Here's another activity that you might like. It's called Give One, Get One. And this is similar to the KWL chart because it gets students thinking and discussing about the topic before they begin reading. So as you can see on this chart, we have 9 squares. You can do 12 squares if you want. And you give the students the topic. So again, the topic is San Francisco. And in each of the squares, you have the students write down one sentence, one thing that they know about the reading topic. So for example, they might say San Francisco has cable cars. They might say San Francisco is located in California. Or they might say, oh, it is a peninsula. So you have your students fill out as many of the boxes as they can. They might only be able to fill in 4 or 5 boxes, and that's fine. Now for the next part of the activity, you'll have students stand up and walk around the classroom. And this is where they do the give one, get one. They'll walk around and talk to other classmates in the class, and they'll ask their classmates, oh, what do you know about San Francisco? So maybe they'll get one from another student. They can also give one to another student as well. So what they'll try to do is to continue to fill out the squares. Now the point here is not to fill in all the squares or get everything correct. The point here is to get students thinking about the topic that they're going to read. And it gets them really interested because after they do this activity, they're going to be really interested in doing the reading. I got this handout on freeology.com. It's a great website. You should check it out. And they have tons of different graphic organizers such as this one. But like I said, it's not necessary to make a photocopy of this. Just have your students take a piece of paper and fold it into squares. That way you don't have to be making extra photocopies. Here's our next activity. And again, this one is very, very simple to do. This one is called mind mapping. So let's say I'm going to give you a reading on Chinese New Year. So you have the students write the words Chinese New Year in the middle of the paper and draw a circle around it. Your students might already know some information about Chinese New Year, things that they've heard about it. So they might write down, oh, I know about the Chinese zodiac. I know that this year is the year of the horse. And I've heard that dragons and tigers are important animals in China. So they would write that to the side in a separate box. They might also say, oh, I know, I've seen about the dragon dance. They do a parade. They might also know about superstitions. They might know that the red color is lucky. They might also know about traditional foods that are eaten in China, such as noodles and fish during the Chinese New Year. So again, this is a great activity for students to do individually at first, and then later have them share their ideas with one another. And this is a great way to get them anticipating the reading and get them really interested. All right, here's something that I think you might like. This is called a pre-reading quiz, and some of you may have used this before. So let's say I'm going to give you a reading on Chinese New Year. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you questions about the reading before you even do the reading. So as you can see, on the left-hand side, you have the agree or disagree column for the before reading. You can also do true or false. The students will go ahead and answer the questions, and then after they're finished reading, they will answer the same quiz, but on the right-hand side. So they'll check off the agree or disagree for after the reading. So let's take a look at these questions. You don't have to answer them yet. We're actually going to give you an opportunity to answer these questions in just a moment, but let me read them to you first. So number 1, it is unlucky to cut your hair before Chinese New Year. Number 2, you should clean your house before Chinese New Year. Number 3, the panda bear is one of the animals in the Chinese zodiac. Number 4, Chinese people wear white during New Year's celebrations. And number 5, lucky money is given to young people in red envelopes during Chinese New Year. All right, so let's try this. We're going to put up a poll on the screen here. And this is before you do the reading on Chinese New Year. So look at the questions again. And please answer if you agree or disagree with these statements. What I like to do is to have the students answer the questions individually first, and then have them share with a partner, because that's how they get the discussion started on the reading. Students love this activity because they're always curious to know what the answers are. And so by the time they're finished taking this little quiz, they're just dying to know the answers to the questions. And they'll definitely say, "Teacher, please tell me the answers to these questions." But then you have to say, "I'm not going to tell you the answers. If you want the answers, you have to do the reading." So, okay, I'm just looking at your answers here. It looks like a lot of you agree with number 1. A lot of you agree with number 2. Panda bear, you disagree with that one. And you also disagree that Chinese people wear white. And many people agree that lucky money is given to young people in red envelopes during Chinese New Year. All right, so I'm going to be nice. Since we're not going to be doing the Chinese New Year reading in the webinar, I'll go ahead and give you the answers, but I would never give the answers to my real students. Okay, so number 1, it is unlucky to cut your hair before Chinese New Year. That is false. So disagree is the correct answer. It is actually unlucky to cut your hair immediately after Chinese New Year. It's okay to cut your hair before, but if you cut your hair after, you might cut off all of your good luck. Number 2, you should clean your house before Chinese New Year. Those of you who put agree, you are correct. You should clean your house before Chinese New Year because you're starting a fresh new year, and you also want to sweep away all the bad luck from the previous year. Number 3, the panda is one of the animals in the Chinese zodiac. The answer is false, so it's disagree. So there are many animals in the Chinese zodiac, such as the tiger, the dragon, and the monkey, but the panda bear is not one of them, even though the panda bear loves to live in China. All right, number 4, Chinese people wear white during New Year's celebrations. That is false. Chinese people wear white during funerals, and red and yellow are the lucky colors that are worn during the New Year's celebrations. And number 5, lucky money is given to young people in red envelopes during Chinese New Year. That is true, agree. So it's really great to be a young person during Chinese New Year because you get lots of money. All right, did anybody get 100% on the quiz? Raise your hand. Bonus points for you. All right, great job. So as we can see from this pre-reading quiz, the students are super interested in the topic. They haven't even started the reading yet, but I guarantee you when they go to do the reading, they will be looking for the answers to this quiz. And it's really fun. It gets them discussing and really excited about the topic. All right, so we just discussed activating prior knowledge. Our second strategy that we are going to discuss today is to use graphic organizers. So can somebody tell me what graphic organizers are? And how can using graphic organizers help our students improve their reading? All right, Sandra says, visual aids help the students understand more easily. It helps to clarify ideas. This is great. Socorro says to find the most important information. Absolutely. Graphic organizers are visuals. Graphic organizers allow students to organize information. As you know, when students read, they kind of get confused. There's so much information. They can't figure out, oh, what were the important main points? And how is that different from the minor points? So everything is just kind of confusing. So in this section, we're going to look at different graphic organizers. We'll start off with a Venn diagram. I'll show you a 2-column chart, a 4-column chart, a storyboard, and how to do some vocabulary cards. So let's take a look at this Venn diagram. As you can see, there are 2 intersecting circles. Give this to your students if they're reading about 2 different topics with contrasting ideas. And some of the ideas could be contrasting, or they might have similarities. They would write down the main ideas of the first topic in the left circle. And they would write down the main ideas or the characteristics of the second topic in the right circle. And then right there in the middle, those are the similarities that those 2 topics have. This allows your students to really understand the similarities and differences between 2 different topics or 2 different ideas. This is a great one to use if you're comparing 2 different characters in a book. It helps students to see how they're similar and different. Again, this is a great visual, especially for visual learners. It allows them to have a picture of what they're reading. Here's another very, very simple graphic organizer. And this is just the 2-column chart. And you can use this chart in so many different ways. I like to use this 2-column chart with a yes and a no. So let's say you are discussing a controversial topic, or you just finished doing a reading on a controversial topic. So, for example, you might give them this sentence, children should be paid to attend school. And then the students would write down in the yes column all the reasons why children should be paid to attend school. You can even have your students do this in groups. So they might write down, yes, it's a great idea to pay students to attend school because they can help out their families. Going to school is like a job. They should learn how to come to school regularly and earn money. And paying children will motivate them. Now, on the other side would be no. Children should not be paid to attend school because it will demotivate them. They will lose the true purpose of learning. They're only going to go to school just for the money. And so these would be their own ideas and also ideas that they draw from their readings as well. At the end, you can have your students come up with a conclusion. All right, now that you have the yes column and the no column, what's your final conclusion? Do you think children should be paid to attend school? Why or why not? And so you can use this with a variety of different topics. So if you're reading a novel with a character in it, you can write down, we admire the main character's actions. So they can say yes we admire the main character's actions, or no, we don't. And then they would draw a conclusion. Here's another graphic organizer that I like to use. This is called a 4-column chart. And I put 4 topics up here. You can choose your own, but I like to do it in this way. After students read an article or a chapter, I have them get into groups and fill out this graphic organizer. I like this because, as you know, sometimes if we have students discuss something after they do a reading, they sometimes get off topic and they'll just start talking about what they're going to do for the weekend. But this is giving them something to do while they're discussing. So after they do the reading, in the far left-hand corner, they can write down the main ideas. So this allows the students to pick out the important concepts from the reading, discuss them with their group, and write them down. In the second column, they can write down key vocabulary words, so words that are difficult for them or anything that they don't understand. If they want, they can also write down the definitions in this column. So it's always a great idea to help our students develop their vocabulary, helping them to get into the virtuous cycle of the good reader. So it's a good idea for them to note down key vocabulary. In the third column, you can have students write down 1 important quotation, or you might say 2 important quotations. So an important quotation is an important sentence or a key concept from the reading. And this is really great because we want our students to be able to choose what is most important in the reading. We don't want them to just write down minor details in this column. What is a really good quotation here? It could be a quotation that is confusing to them. It could be a sentence that they find interesting, or a part in the reading that they can make a connection to. So I like this a lot because it gets students critically choosing what part of the reading that they find interesting or important. In the last column, you can have students write down their comments, their questions. You want them to think about the reading. Here, they might even write down any connections they make with their own lives. So again, this is a pretty easy activity to do. You can have them do this on a piece of paper, or you can have them do this on the board or on a piece of poster paper. This is a great group activity. It's very collaborative and gets the discussion going. Now here's a great activity, especially for our lower level learners. This is called a storyboard, and I like this activity because it incorporates art. Often students get confused with the sequence of what they read. So they'll read something and they'll get totally confused. Oh, what came first? What came second? What came next? I forgot. So for your readers who need some kind of sequential visual, this is really great. And like I said before, great for lower level learners. So you can have them do 6 squares like this. You can have them do 8 squares if you want. And here they will illustrate or draw pictures of the story in sequential order. I suppose you could also do this for a movie too that your students are watching in class. They would draw the scenes in order, and then they would write down a sentence or 2 underneath the picture as a brief summary, just to describe what's happening in that scene. So this is a really good one for students to share with each other. This is also a good one for you to put up on your classroom walls because it's very artistic and colorful. Students really enjoy this activity a lot because it's great for our visual and artistic learners. Now, a lot of you mentioned that vocabulary is quite a challenge for many of your students. So I wanted to show you an example of a graphic organizer that you can do for vocabulary development. So here is your flashcard, and you would have your students write down the vocabulary word on the front of the flashcard. Now hopefully these would be vocabulary words that they encounter in their readings. So the vocabulary that they learn in the class is the vocabulary that they're coming across in their reading. So for example, you might have this word pompous. On the back of the vocabulary card, you would do this. You would break it up into 4 squares, and in the upper left-hand square, you would write down the part of speech. So in this case, it's an adjective. In the upper right-hand corner, you would write down the explanation or the definition. So this could be a dictionary definition, or it could be a definition in the student's native language. In the lower left-hand corner, the students would write down a sentence so that they can see the word in context. So for example, my date last night thought he was amazing, but I found him to be a pompous jerk. So you can write a really funny sentence so they'll understand the word and help them to understand the word within context. So the funnier the sentence, the better. They can also write down a sentence that is from the reading. So that will help them remember the word in context in the reading. And then in the lower right-hand corner, you can have the students just do a little visual. So in this case, because the word pompous means self-important or arrogant, you can have the students make a funny picture of an arrogant, self-important looking person. All right. So we have a question here about the graphic organizers. Tatiana from Russia, you asked, do you think that the graphic organizers need to be assessed? Are they a tool for students to use to organize their thoughts for other tasks that may be assessed later? Let's see. I think the graphic organizers are great, a great way for students to organize their thoughts. It could be used as assessment, so you can, as the students are working in groups, you can go from group to group and see how they are filling out the graphic organizer to see if they're organizing the information in the correct way. So I think it's a great assessment tool. You can collect the assessments as well, the graphic organizers, and just give them points for the graphic organizers. So I think it's an excellent way to see if students have understood what they've read. So even the sequencing activity, collect that and see how they did on it. I think it's a great way. All right. So let's just do a little review. We have talked about 2 strategies so far on how to help our students improve their reading. So the first strategy was to connect reading to prior knowledge. So getting students interested in the reading, getting them to discuss the reading before they even do it. Our second strategy was to use graphic organizers. So using the 2-column chart, the Venn diagram, vocabulary flashcards to help our visual learners and to help organize information. The third strategy that we're going to discuss today will be close reading. And as we discussed before, a lot of our students do not read closely. They just skim the reading very quickly. They'll read it once. They'll say, "Teacher, I'm finished with the reading." They don't engage with the text. They don't ask questions about the text. They'll say, "Oh yeah, I understand it," but you know that they did not understand it. So in this section, we are going to discuss engaging with the text not just one time, but 3 times. I'm going to show you how to do a think aloud. As you know, good readers, like me and you, when we read something, we actually have thoughts going through our minds. We have questions when we read. We have comments. We show surprise. We might not understand vocabulary words, but we're constantly thinking as we are reading. And sometimes students don't know that. They don't think when they read. And so I'm going to give you an example of how you can show students how to think out loud. Next, I'm going to show you annotation. So annotation is marking up a reading, underlining, making comments in the margin. And I'm going to show you how that will be very helpful in getting students to think closely and engage with the reading. And finally, I'm going to show you something fun called the Reader's Bookmark. All right, so let's jump right into close reading. So the first time you have students read, go ahead and have them read with a pencil or pen in their hands. Give them some symbols that they can use in order to mark up their text. So you might have them circle vocabulary words, or have them circle interesting concepts. Have them underline or put a star next to important points. Use some of these symbols. These are some symbols that I use with my students. A check means I understand. Star means something that's important. A question mark means I am unsure or I have a question. A question mark is something that you're surprised about. And the infinity sign is you're making a connection with something else. This reminds me of something else. Now, you don't have to use these symbols. You can come up with your own. I know some teachers, they have their students use a heart if it's a sentence that they like or they really, find interesting, or a happy face if they find something funny. So on the first read, have your students just mark up their text like this. And this will be a great first reading for them. But let's not stop at the first reading. Let's get the students to engage with the text a second time. Don't forget this step. In the second read, the teacher reads the text out loud to model fluent reading. A lot of our students have not heard English a lot. They don't know what fluent reading sounds like. So the second read will give them an opportunity to hear you, the teacher, read to them. Here they can develop pronunciation, especially on the difficult vocabulary words. Students really enjoy this. And have the students follow along with their finger or pencil. So to show you that they are actually following along and doing the reading with you. After the second read, you might want to have the students discuss their first impressions and discuss their notes again. So again, this is the second time that they're coming across this reading. This is really great for shorter articles with a lot of difficult concepts. You might not be able to do the 3 readings on everything you do in class because some things are just too long, but you can just do, 1 page or part of an article. Well, don't stop there. Have the students do a third read. Have them engage with the reading again because they're not finished. In the third reading, you can model a think aloud and annotation. And I think this is a really important skill for students to use. Students should be thinking out loud when they read, or at least they should have thoughts when they read. And I'm going to give you an example of how students can think out loud. You should always model this and show your students how to do this, or they're not going to understand how to do it. And then second, you can have the students do the think aloud and the annotation in pairs. So let me give you an example. So here's our reading on Chinese New Year. You would do this reading out loud, but you would model for the students the thoughts that are going through your head as you're reading. So a think aloud might go something like this. Chinese New Year is celebrated all over the world. In China, it's a time when families take holidays and get together. Oh, this sounds like a very important holiday because all the families get together. They gather at each other's homes for visits and meals and often have a special feast on New Year's Eve. All right, here's some new vocabulary words for me. I don't know the word gather, so I think I might circle it. And I think the word gather, though, means get together because it looks like the families are getting together for visits and meals. I don't know this word feast. That's a new word for me, but I think feast means a dinner or maybe something with food because it says have a special feast. So, I bet they eat a lot of good food for Chinese New Year's. I wonder what types of special foods they eat during this time. All right, so as you can see, I'm thinking out loud. The students are hearing me think. All right, before the new year, it is a tradition to clean house to sweep away all the bad luck from the old year. Wow, that's surprising. I never knew that. That word tradition is new for me. Perhaps that word means something that they do every year. Okay, often at midnight on New Year's Eve, people open all the doors and windows to let the old year leave. Wow, that's really interesting. I never knew that Chinese people did that. Right at midnight, they would open all the doors and windows. That's interesting. In my country, too, we have some things we do every year for New Year's, but that's a new one for me. All right, so as you can see, you should model that to your students. You don't have to do the whole reading, but at least a few paragraphs so that the students get an idea of what's going through your mind as you're reading. This is a very important skill when students get higher in level or when they move into college, because at the higher levels, they will be required to have some thoughts about what they read, to think critically, right? Now, you should also model for students how to annotate their readings. So again, as students get more advanced in reading, they should be able to mark up their books or the text and make note of what's important or questions that they have. So an annotation might look something like this. As you can see in the first paragraph, I've highlighted or underlined a key phrase and put a star next to it. I'm circling vocabulary words that I don't understand, and I can always look those words up in the dictionary later. You might want to have the students circle important concepts, and you can have them write down their comments in the margins. So here you can see I wrote down some questions. Large meal, is that a feast? What do they eat? Or you might have them write down, oh, my country also has traditions for New Year's. So they're making connections with their own lives. This makes the reading more interesting to them. All right. So this is a really great way to get your students reading the text closely. We want to try to get our students not to just read things quickly, but really, really engage with what they're reading very closely. All right. Aura from Venezuela, you have a really good point that using this technique might actually slow down their reading speed. So maybe model it. Maybe don't slow down too much, but what the students could do is perhaps at the end of every paragraph, they can stop and just make a comment. And maybe after every sentence would be slowing them down too much. So you might want to try that maybe at the end of every paragraph. But you're absolutely right. You don't want to slow down too much or look up every single word in the dictionary. And also by this point, they've read the reading 2 times, or they've had some contact with the reading 2 times. So hopefully by the 3rd time, they've already captured the main idea of the reading. So hopefully doing this activity won't interrupt their comprehension too much. But that's a really good question. All right, here's a fun little thing for your students. I put this reader's bookmark on the Ning website, and you can photocopy this. If you want, you can photocopy this on colored paper and cut these out and hand these out to your students as a gift. They'll love it. And students can keep these in the books that they are reading. So as you can see, this is a reader's bookmark designed to help students read their text more closely. It helps the students talk to the text. So as you can see, there's a little section for vocabulary. They can go ahead and write down vocabulary words here on the lines. If they run out of room, they can write the vocabulary on the back of the bookmark. And I have some critical thinking questions for them as well. So students really should be thinking as they read. And if they're not sure of how to think, or what phrases they should use when they're thinking about reading, here are some sentences or phrases that can help them. So you can say, I think, I wonder, I notice. These are all things that they should be going through their head as they're doing the reading. This is confusing because good readers are confused. It's okay to be confused. I like this part because good readers have opinions. Good readers like certain parts. They don't like certain parts. I think the character is feeling blank because. And I think blank will happen next because. That's a really great prediction sentence. So predicting is another great activity that good readers have. So again, this is just a fun bookmark for you, something easy that I think your students will like a lot. All right, so we've covered 3 strategies so far in this webinar. Strategy number 1, activate prior knowledge, getting students to think about the reading beforehand. Strategy number 2, using graphic organizers, using visuals, helping students to organize their information. Strategy number 3 is close reading. Not having your students just read really quickly and say, I'm finished, but actually engage with the reading. And I suggested having your students engage 3 times and doing a think aloud and annotation. Our 4th strategy to help students to become better readers is to help them encourage critical thinking. So again, instead of having students just do true-false questions or fill in the blank or multiple choice, it's a good idea to have them really interact with the text and to get the discussion going. So you want them to think about the reading critically. After all, they're going to have to do this as they get higher up in level. And anyway, we have to have critical thinking just every day in our lives. So it's a good skill to have in general. So in this section, we're going to discuss how to encourage students to answer open-ended questions. We're going to discuss an inner-outer circle activity. And finally, the 4 corners activity. So hopefully all of these activities will be really easy, and hopefully you can incorporate them into your classes. All right, so one strategy that you can use is to ask open-ended questions. This is a great idea. Now, first of all, I have a question for you. What is an open-ended question? When you ask questions to students in their readings, These questions should encourage students to think deeply about the text. So, I have some questions for you here, and please tell me which one below is an open-ended question. So, is it A, what is your name? B, how many months are there in a year? Or is it C, what are some ways to improve your students' reading skills? All right, so it looks like a lot of you got this. So what is your name only has one answer. So that is not an open-ended question. B, how many months are there in a year? Again, there's only one answer to B. So the correct answer here is C, what are some ways to improve your students' reading skills? So as you can see, for this question, there are many, many different answers, and you could discuss C for a really long time. So those are the types of questions that you want to ask your students, not just the simple yes or no, but try to ask open-ended questions so they'll really discuss and think critically about the text. So here are some examples of some open-ended questions. You might ask the students, for example, why did the character act in that way? Why do you think she did that? You might want to ask the students, what does this remind you of and why? What does this paragraph remind you of? Chinese New Year, does that remind you of any holidays in your country? Making connections. Another example could be, do you admire the main character's actions? Why or why not? Again, these questions do not have a yes or no answer. They have multiple answers. This will really get the discussions going. Now, you don't want to just stop there. You should also ask follow-up questions to facilitate discussion. So, after asking the open-ended questions, you should ask the students, well, what makes you say that? What happened in the reading that makes you say that? Can you point to a particular passage in the reading that makes you say that? So that way they're looking back at the reading to support their arguments. Do you agree with what your classmates said? Why or why not? So continue to ask more questions to get them to dig deeper and to think more deeply about the reading. All right, here is another activity that you can do with your students to help cultivate critical thinking. I love this activity. It's called inner-outer circles or a conversation line. As you can see in this picture, the students are actively learning. The students are lined up, and in front of them they have a partner. As you can see, they have the book in their hands because they're discussing the book. You can either have the students form a line like this with a partner in front of them, or you can have two circles, which is why it's called inner-outer circles. And the people in the inner circle will be facing the people on the outer side of the circle. Some people have said that there's not enough room in their classroom to do this activity. So I have done this activity outside. That might be another option for you, and it might be kind of fun. I like this activity because it gets students moving. It's a great kinesthetic activity, and it gets students discussing the reading. So let me give you some examples of some questions that the students would discuss when they are in their circle or conversation line. So here are some possible discussion questions. Again, these are all open-ended questions. Which character in the book did you most identify with and why? What was your favorite part of the book? What do you think will happen in the next chapter? Would you recommend this book to others? Why or why not? So, don't ask all 5 questions at once. Just start with the first question. You might want to write the question on the board. Then you ask the question to the students and give them about 3 or 4 minutes to discuss the question. Make sure that both partners get a chance to talk. It might get a little bit loud in the classroom, but I think it's really good. It's a good type of loud because they're discussing. Make sure they have the book in their hand, the text, so they can refer to passages and key sentences from the text. After the students are finished discussing the question, give them, a few minutes, you're going to yell stop, or you're going to yell change. And this is when you have the students change partners. So if the students are lined up in 2 lines, just have one of the lines move over 1 space. And then the person at the end, they'll just have to run up to the other side of the line. And now everyone will have a different partner. And then you'll go ahead and either ask the second question or you'll write it on the board and ask the question like that. And you'll go through this. You might ask maybe a series of 5, 6, 7 questions. And each time the students will move so they'll have a different partner. So it's kind of fun to talk with different people in the classroom. And students are definitely not bored with this activity. They're actively learning. They absolutely love this. If students are in the circle, just have one of the circles move 1 space to the right, for example. Here's an activity that I've used a lot with my classes. It has been very successful, and it's also one of the easiest activities I've done. And this is called the 4 corners activity. So all you have to do here is get 4 pieces of paper and write these words on the 4 pieces of paper. Strongly agree, agree, strongly disagree, and disagree. And you just go ahead and tape them to the 4 corners of your classroom. Now, remember when we talked about how our students sometimes will read something and they really don't have an opinion about what they read. They don't have anything deep to say about their reading. Well, in the 4 corners activity, what you're going to do is put a statement on the board. So write down a sentence, and this would be a sentence that is related to their reading. So if your students are doing a reading on racism or race relations in your country, you can go ahead and write this on the board. Then the students will get up out of their seats. This is another great kinesthetic activity. And they will go to the corner that corresponds with their belief. So if they strongly agree with this statement, everyone will go to the strongly agree corner. If they disagree with this statement, they'll go to the disagree corner. Now, and students have to choose a corner. They can't stay in the middle. There's always a few students who want to stay in the middle. Now, when students are in their corner, they will take some time in their corner to discuss why they are in that corner. And they should write down in their notebooks all the reasons why they, for example, agree that there is very little racism in my country. They should have the text in their hands so they can refer to the text and give arguments and use the text to back up their arguments. So the students will, after they're finished discussing with their groups, they're going to present their arguments to the rest of the class. Now, before you just have students yell out their arguments, it might be a good idea to give them some language that they can use in order to present their ideas. So you might want to write some phrases on the board in English to help them. Otherwise, they might, start arguing, and it might, become too much of a heated debate. So you might write down phrases such as, from my perspective, or in my opinion, or I believe, or I think. You might have them say, well, this is just my opinion. This is just what I think. So after the students present their arguments to the whole class, you might give everybody a chance to do a counter argument as well. And you can give them language for counter arguing. You might have them say, I don't completely agree with you, or I disagree with you because, or I see your point, but have you ever thought about this? So those are some great phrases that you can have your students practice with. Otherwise, they're not quite sure how to phrase their arguments. All right, so once every corner has given their argument, then students, if they choose, can decide to move to a different corner if another corner has persuaded them. However, if they decide to change corners, they do need to explain to the class why they are changing corners. So again, I like this activity because it's kinesthetic. You can use this with a variety of topics. You can arrange it so it's a higher level or lower level. So for lower level students, just ask an easier question. You're not going to use a question like this about racism. Another great idea is to use this activity for a pre-reading activity. So if you're going to do a reading on racism and they haven't done the reading yet, you can still ask this question and you can get them interested in the reading and discussing before they actually even start reading the text. All right, here are some other sentences that you can use. Some of these are kind of controversial. So like I said before, kids should be paid to attend school. Animal testing should be banned. Or the government should put an additional tax on soda to fight obesity. So those are some suggestions. I'm sure that you have a lot more. It really depends on what you're reading with your students in class. But let's try this out. What do you think? I'm going to put a sentence here on the screen for you, and you tell me if you strongly agree, strongly disagree, agree, or disagree. And so we're going to put up a poll. And here is your sentence. People who litter, so these are people who throw garbage or trash on the ground, should have to pay a fine. What do you think? Now don't just type in, I agree, I disagree. I would like you to type in your reason. So you might say, oh, I agree with this because if people are forced to pay a fine, they will think twice about throwing trash on the ground. Or I disagree because it's giving too much control. I mean, we don't have enough money to pay a fine. So go ahead and be sure to write down why you agree or disagree. So Josefina, you put I agree, explain why. Okay, this looks good. Rizgar, you disagree. Explain why. All right. These look like great comments. Thank you. So what you want to do is you want to continue to encourage your students to give reasons, because you don't want them just to say, oh yeah, I agree, or I disagree. You want to be sure that they have very specific reasons and arguments to back up what they have to say. Encourage them to use the text because your text will have information for them to support their arguments. So again, this is just a fun, easy activity to use with your students to get them thinking critically about the reading. Usually I will give the students maybe 3 questions to do this activity for. So I'll give them 3 sentences that are related to the reading. It does take a lot of class time, I will admit. So if I give them 3 questions to do this activity, it will take minimum 45 minutes, sometimes even an hour, because you want to give the students enough time to give their reasons and really support what they want to say. So yeah, very time consuming, but I feel like it's an absolute wonderful use of time and much better than having students just answer true and false. So thank you all for all of your comments. These are great. It looks like you're on the right track now. It looks like a lot of people are writing down more reasons. Okay. All right. Some people are saying punishment should not be in the form of paying money. Maybe other types of punishments. Okay, great. Thank you so much for participating in this. So I gave you some ideas of some topics that you could use for the 4 corners activities. What are some other controversial sentences that you could use for the 4 corners activity? So please write in your chat box right now. Maybe something that you've been reading with your class, other ideas. Okay. National exam. Yeah, that's a good one. Should students take a national exam? Bullying in school. Okay. All right. Girls should not be allowed to go to school. These are really good ones. All right. School uniforms. Smoking. Should smoking be illegal? All right. These are really good ones. And so just think about some good sentences that you can use for your class. All right. Well, let's review. We talked about 4 different strategies today. 4 strategies and lots of activities to get your students reading better. And just as a review, can anybody tell us what the first strategy was? What was the first thing we talked about? Write it in your chat box. Okay, it looks like Anna from Lebanon got it first. She said, activating prior knowledge. Very good, everyone. And what are some examples of activating prior knowledge? Good job. Sergio, KWL Chart, give one, get one. Pre-reading activities. Very good. The pre-reading quiz. So all of these are great strategies to get your students interested in the reading. A lot of you said that the students are bored, they don't connect with the reading. Well, doing pre-reading activities will get them interested, activate their prior knowledge. All right, very good, everyone. How about number 2? Do you remember what the second strategy is that we covered? All right. Wow, you all are responding very quickly. So yes, using graphic organizers. So give me some examples of graphic organizers. 4 columns, the Venn diagram. These are great. Don't forget the storyboard, the flashcards. Yeah, the spider web too, the mind mapping. Even though I covered the mind mapping for activating prior knowledge, The mind mapping would also be a graphic organizer. Same thing with the KWL chart. That's another form of a graphic organizer. So that will help students to organize their information, because sometimes there is so much information for them that they need to put it into different categories. All right, who can remember the third strategy that we talked about in today's webinar? Good job. Close reading. So instead of having the students just read very quickly and say, okay, I'm finished, and not think about the reading at all, having the students look at the reading and engage with the reading, not just one time, but 3 times. So having them annotate, right? Having them engage. The teacher should be reading to the students using the symbols, annotation, thinking out loud. Good, I'm glad you're remembering all this. And don't forget the bookmark. Those are that's a great way to get your students to talk to the text, to think about the text, and to ask some really good questions. All right, can anybody remember the 4th strategy that we covered today? All right, you're absolutely correct. Thank you, Sarah from Bahrain. Critical thinking. Encourage critical thinking in our students. Allow them to engage with the text, to think deeply about the text. So not just doing multiple choice questions where there's only a yes/no question, but have them to think critically about what they read. And what are some activities that we talked about to help students think critically? All right, great. Asking open-ended questions, the inner-outer circles. Good. Yeah, this looks really good. The 4 corners activity. Okay. So I hope these activities that I shared with you today will be helpful in helping your students read better. Let's take a few moments right now to do a little reflection. Write down in the chat box, what are your thoughts, comments, and questions about today's webinar? A reflection is a really good idea to do with your students at the end of class. So you can ask your students the same question. You can say, what are your thoughts, comments, and questions about today's reading? Give the students a few moments to write their reflections on a piece of paper by themselves. And then go ahead and have them pair up or get into a small group and have them share their reflections with each other. This will help personalize the learning and the reading even more. They'll begin to see how the reading is important to them. Thank you all for all of your comments. I love reading these. It's great to see such wonderful participation from all over the world. Thank you all